There's always a stack of stuff, no matter what's happening, there's a stack of stuff that's good. And it may not be the biggest stack, it may be just a little stack, but it's a little thing at the bottom that's worthwhile and can give you hope and give you strength.
Okay, Originals listeners, forgive me. I'm going to sound super indulgent for a couple minutes, or at least more than usual. Please bear with me. I am a healthy 48-year-old man. I can walk. I can actually run too, but generally I prefer not to. I have 2 sons, aged 10 and 12. They're both healthy. I have a great wife. We live in a house in a town with great schools. I don't live under crushing debt. Nobody, as far as I know, is about to drop bombs on Connecticut. I know intellectually that I am the recipient of great, almost inconceivable privilege. If I were a different kind of person, I'd be posting pictures of my life on Instagram, hashtagging them blessed. How much do I hate people who use the hashtag blessed? I never do it, but I am objectively blessed. But I'm a miserable bastard. It's true. I mean, happiness and gratitude, they just aren't natural emotions for me. And I'm totally ashamed to admit this. I absolutely loved the Garfield books as a kid. And now that I'm thinking about it, I basically grew up to be Garfield. I'm privileged, I'm adored, I'm bloated, I'm indulged, I'm stuffed to the gills with all manner of lasagnas, but I'm still miserable on Mondays. And I'm miserable on Tuesdays. And Wednesdays and Thursdays are no picnic. I do happen to like Fridays. So I'm not going to bore you too much with the reasons. I know they're all ridiculous. You know, my peers have outpaced me professionally. I could talk about my flabby body, my dumb, stupid, fat face. I obsess about all the wrong turns that I've taken in my life, the stupid shit I've said and done over the years. And as much as I love all of you, my listeners, I wonder why there aren't more of you, like 50,000 more of you. I mean, is it too much to ask? Anyway, look, I've been depressed before, but now I'm actually not depressed. I'm just kind of sad, just generally sad. All the time? No, I have moments of great pleasure and joy, and I'm actually surprisingly good company. It might be hard to believe right now. But I'm down more than I'd like. I wish I weren't, and I've spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying not to be. I want to be a better lemonade maker. When life gives me lemons, I look for paper cuts. I wish this weren't the case, but I know I'm not alone. This country is totally lousy with miserable, ungrateful bastards. Most of my closest friends are miserable, ungrateful bastards. Some of you, no doubt, are. So I share all this as a preface to the fact that there have been moments in my life that have actually pierced these feelings, that challenged me to do better, to feel better, that have provided inspiration, that these thoughts that so many of us live with and walk around with aren't any kind of objective truth, but they're rather these illusions. They're like hacky scripts written by damaged brains. There are some real living people who show us as much, who provide us some hope, show us a different way. So it's nearly Thanksgiving in 2020, which is, we can all agree, the worst year in modern American history. And as usual, when I sit at my table, I'm going to try to be thankful for all the usual stuff. But this year, I'm also going to be especially thankful for the example set by this episode's guest, Michael J. Fox. This is The Originals, and I'm your host, Andrew Goldman. You've heard the opening spiel before, why I started the show, and I bet by now you're sick of listening to me. I will tell you this podcast is produced in proud partnership with Los Angeles Magazine. And if you happen to like this episode, make sure you also read my piece in the December issue of the magazine. Better yet, why don't you safely subscribe from home at lamag.com. Michael J. Fox has a new book out. It's called No Time Like the Future, An Optimist Considers Mortality, and it's his third memoir charting the progression of his Parkinson's disease. He's not at all shy about describing his current condition. His health sucks, and he knows it's only going to suck more. Parkinson's is a progressive disease, and it does exactly what it has to do, which is progress. He recently had to give up his beloved golf game due to balance issues. Walking is getting progressively harder, and as you're about to hear, talking is harder. His memory isn't as good as it was, and he's totally lost his sense of taste. So, as if dealing with his Parkinson's wasn't enough, back in 2018, doctors discovered a tumor on his spine that, if left untreated, would have paralyzed him. So after months spent recuperating from spinal surgery, which necessitated 24-hour care, grueling physical therapy to get him out of a wheelchair and teach his legs anew how to walk, he took a really hard fall in his kitchen in Manhattan, splintering his arm from shoulder to elbow, which necessitated surgery and 19 screws to fasten a steel plate onto his shattered bone. Fox called his first memoir Lucky Man, and the title actually wasn't ironic. He claims his post-Parkinson's years as a father of 4 and husband to actress Tracy Pollan has been far richer than his high-flying decades as a healthy TV and movie star. His Michael J. Fox Foundation has raised nearly $1 billion to research a cure for Parkinson's, but this arm break challenged this sunny outlook. It appeared for a moment that Michael J. Fox's optimism might have its limits. Michael J. Fox, welcome to the Originals.
Thank you.
You know, you've had this disease for 30 years, and this is your third book about it, and you've written with so much optimism in the past about it. And, you know, I start this new book, and all of a sudden it seems like it's very possible that you've lost it. And I was just wondering, what was different about this particular accident, and why did it bring you to that place?
Something about the violence of hitting the floor and immediately knowing that I was screwed, that I did something bad. If I had my cell phone, because I called my assistant, Nina, because my wife was in Martha's Vineyard. I said, you got to get over here. I think I broke my arm. And she came over, and while she was coming over, I sat on the phone, and it just all went to shit. I just was yelling at myself. I was so angry. I was like, I let everybody down, and I have no optimistic, happy talk for this. I have no cheer up mic thing I can give myself. I have nothing but regret and shame, and I just felt like it's this is what brings me down, this arm, and I thought about how I had I tried to sell optimism as a panacea, had I tried to another word I used was commodified hope. I made it a package, like it was really glib about it. I said it was great, and here I am under this phone with a broken arm, and I just feel like shit. And I blame myself, and I never felt, since the early days of Parkinson's, when I would beat my arm up because it wouldn't stop. It's time for me to go out and do my scene and spin city in front of the audience. It was the worst I felt since then, the arm just. I guess the way I know that we found my optimism was there was a time that summer of 18, that all that was a lot of work, and I felt it. And I knew it, and I said, this is a lot of work. This fucking arm and my back, and I can't stand it, I can't walk, and I had people in my bedroom looking at me when I'm sleeping. And
that was the weirdest. So you had like 24-hour aides.
Yeah, because I couldn't walk. They had to get me to the bathroom, get me get dressed, and I was really incapacitated.
I would be very bad at that job. Did you ever catch them falling asleep?
No. I sometimes wish they'd fall asleep. I wanted them to fall asleep. I was thinking of putting melatonin in their tea.
It's got to be a super creepy experience to like wake up and see some dude just sort of looking at you across the room. No?
I talk about Frank in the book, who was a biker guy, and he just, I'd wake up and he had his hood on, and he'd have his iPhone, and it would be glowing in his face, and it was just like this apparition at the end of my bed. It was like Yoda or Gandalf, and or Satan or Beelzebub. So it was a weird experience. And then the point I was making was that there was that time when I was complaining, I was cranky, and I was felt singled out. Like in my expression myself about selling optimism or being so optimistic or potentially Pollyannish, which I didn't believe I was up to that point. I wasn't seeing the big picture. I just lost it.
Was it because it was something that you could control yourself, other than?
Yeah, I did it. Because I did it. Parkinson's, I didn't do. The tumor, I didn't do. But the broken arm, which screwed up all my walking. Now I learned to walk, but I had to readjust my balance. I had to retune my gyroscope. And
so you spent just a moment talking about how you felt like maybe you were sort of selling this optimism, and you weren't feeling the optimism yourself. I mean, do you feel like there's got to be a huge responsibility, given that you are the most famous living Parkinson's patient right now, to provide hope to people? I mean, how much? Because there are certain very dark periods in parts of this book, but I mean, in the end, it's generally optimistic. But do you feel like a responsibility to be optimistic?
No, that's the thing. I've arrived at my optimism it's pure. Not that it wasn't pure before, but it's been tested. It's been through the gauntlet. And what I came upon in thinking about it, because I really had this time where my body was healing, even with a broken arm. It took about 6 to 8 weeks, and there was this. I just started thinking about things. I started thinking about what I was afraid of, what distracted me, what from that fear, and what the bottom of my optimism was, and I figured out, and what I knew to a certain extent, but I really purely embraced. It's about gratitude. It's just about being grateful. There's always a stack of stuff. No matter what's happening, there's a stack of stuff that's good. And it may not be the biggest stack. It may be just a little stack, but it's a little thing at the bottom that's worthwhile and can give you hope and give you strength. Stuff happens that it can shock you out of who you are and it can shock you into thinking that you're not who you thought you were. And the arriving at the optimistic place is not arriving at now I'm an optimist again. It's just a feeling. It's like what I get is that you can't define it. You can't. It's just a question of if you can find happiness in your life. And there's also a real understanding of what I really got in the course of this experience, and to an extent writing the book, clarified it for me. People throw around the word depression, and I certainly was depressed during this, but not clinical depression. People have depression, and I was talking to someone today who said, not to get too grim, but we were talking about suicide came up, and I said, it always strikes me strange when people say, I don't know, how can he do that? What reason he had for doing that? He clearly had a reason.
Yeah,
it was clearly something, and it's not just a made up thing. There was something there, and even though I wasn't that low, I looked at everything. I had nothing to do. I had no time. I had nothing on my hands, but to look at this, and I had made notes along the way for some reason. My handwriting is so bad that only I could read them. So I had my producing partner Nell would sit at the typewriter, and I'd read my notes and I'd make them into sentences, and she would type it out for me, and that was the process. But what was really strange was all this happened, all this navel gazing and this introspection happened ultimately in the middle of this pandemic. So I was doing stuff with her over the FaceTime, and it was a strange experience because we knew what was going on in the world, and we were in this tight little cocoon talking about my broken arm, and it was very strange.
Has the pandemic affected you? I mean, you presumably, while you were recovering, you would have to stay in the house. A lot of us have been staying in the house. Haven't had the mobility issues that you have. But
I've been isolating for a long time, physically isolating because of all the health issues I had. I also sometimes when I move, I don't move really smoothly. Sometimes I move relatively normally, but a good amount of time I move. I can careen and I can be erratic. And I'm in serious jeopardy of slamming into people. So I keep my distance in that way, too.
One of the things that you actually write about in the book, which I think is interesting, and I don't know if it's too much to tell us right now, but you live right next door to your office, and we're in your office right now.
Yeah.
And the way you describe it, people think, I'd hop on an elevator and I'd sort of go down to the ground floor and I'd go, how many steps is it?
About 300 or something.
300 steps.
I counted out one day, but my steps are so erratic that it could be anything. It could be anywhere from 80 to 1,000.
But it's not. It seems like the way you wrote about it is it's not insignificant operation to get from your apartment to here.
To this day, it's tough. My door is on Fifth Avenue, and so now when I go out and I come back and forth on my daily routine, and when the steps may have also included going. Like I go to my office, which is at the door to the left, kind of a skewed bank, left turn, but it's uneven in a way that no one would notice except people that have screwed up in their gyroscopes. That everything is about where am I in space, proprioception, and so it's kind of odd, and I have to sort of count my steps and keep my pace and not speed up because if I speed up, I'll fall down.
Yeah.
And if I slow down, I'll fall down. If I don't put my feet one in front of the other. If I connect them, they'll stick together and I'll fall down. So it's a labor-intensive effort. I used to joke that I liked it because it was a commute. If it was snowing outside, I had to put on a parka. If it was raining, I had to put on raincoat. I couldn't wear my pajamas down in the office.
So, in approaching this interview, I was a little trepidatious because I do find that when you write about the way people respond to you, I think that there are typical ways that people respond to people that are differently abled. And I don't. What are the worst questions that you get? I mean, what's the crappiest? What's the thing that you're sick of?
It's not a question. I mean, I always use the word atavistic response because it goes back to cavemen and wolves. I mean, it's like you're just naturally afraid of things. If someone is moving erratically or quickly or unexpectedly or inexplicably in front of you, you have a reaction to it. Mm-hmm. And you can someone can tell you later that's Timmy. He's got this and he takes a special bus or whatever. But your first reaction is, oh my God, what is that? What happened? And so I'm used to that. But what drives me crazy is when you're walking and you trip, and everyone goes, be careful. I think, no, I'm not going to be free to be careful. I mean, I was careful then. It just happened. Well, slow down. Yeah, I'm slowing down. I mind my own business. I mean, it gets a little,
Yeah.
Be careful.
When he was diagnosed with Parkinson's back in 1991, a doctor told Fox he'd have 10 good years of acting left in him. So Fox had a lot of work to do, a lot of money to make, and he sprinted through a bunch of lucrative comedy vehicles. And then in 1996, he took Spin City on ABC. Then, pretty much on schedule, he found that the illness was making him work too hard. He made his diagnosis public in 1998. Then 2 years after that, went on to announce his retirement from Spin City and acting so he could work on his foundation. But retirement didn't actually last very long. He came back and he did arcs on a bunch of shows like Scrubs, Boston Legal, and in each of them incorporating his symptoms into the characters. His role as a paralyzed base jumper on Rescue Me earned him his 5th Emmy. And then he made his big return to NBC in 2013 with the Michael J. Fox Show, in which he played a version of himself, funny dad, doing the best he could with a bunch of kids and Parkinson's, but it lasted only one season. Then, his most recent experiences on Designated Survivor and The Good Fight, they just started to feel too challenging. Speaking reliably was becoming tougher, and memorizing lines was increasingly becoming an issue.
I was disappointed to see, and maybe I shouldn't be disappointed, and I wondered you retired once in the year 2000. You acknowledged your diagnosis. You'd been diagnosed like 8 years before, and you kept it a secret, and then you acknowledged it, and then a couple years later, you quit Spin City, but then you came back. In this book, you basically say you're done working. Is that right? Is it just...
Now I think I'm done working. I think the second time around was really different because what I was done with was major. Like I didn't know this, but what I was done with at the point I left Spin City was being and later I dabbled with it again and it stung me again when I did my own show. But I couldn't carry that load anymore. I couldn't carry the load of being executive producer and the lead and the thing and helping make sure the scripts got delivered every week and then dealing with my Parkinson's, and I thought I could handle it, and I did 4 years, and then I couldn't do it anymore. I just physically couldn't get out of bed, and
you did 4 years. I'm sorry, 4 years of
Spin City.
Oh, Spin City, yeah.
And then I was just done. I was just running out like a dish rag, and Charlie showed up and did the show, and I got paid, and it was all good.
Yeah.
But during that time, I was thinking I felt So I found a new doctor who's a great doctor, and she hooked me up with different meds, and I was feeling better and more. And I could depend on what was going to happen. I could judge cause and effect. If I did this, then the result would be that. And I felt better about it. And then, like as if you could get into my brain, Bill Lawrence had the show Scrubs, and he wrote this part. And he called me up and asked me if I'd do it. And so I said, well, I come with a lot of baggage. I'm like, you have to adjust some things for me. And he said, no problem. And he did, and I had a great experience. And then and other people asked me to do other things, and I said, no, I was probably a one-off. But then David Kelly sent a script for Boston Legal, and that was really good. Mm-hmm. I said, yeah, I can give this a shot. And they all had the guy in Scrubs, the doctor had OCD, and the guy who was a billionaire businessman in Boston Legal was stage 4 cancer.
I didn't really understand this. You have Parkinson's. None of the.
But I have a thing. Like what I tapped into was I have a thing, and everybody has a thing, and that thing can be like you can like if I move my hands randomly, that's my Parkinson's. If I have a dish towel in my hand, a bar of soap, I do that. It's the same feeling. It's the same release. It's the same uncontrollable thing. It's
Oh,
just
like what the compulsive washing the hands. Yeah.
So like, and the cancer is incurable. Incurable. It's this is my situation. How do I deal with it? How do I deal with the people in my life?
Yeah. You know, I want to go back to Spin City. When you were diagnosed in '91, and you didn't. I guess it sounded like, much like somebody would come out like if they were gay. You were hounded by the tabloids. They kind of had, they figured something was wrong. But you spent years masking your symptoms. What shocked me was reading that you didn't actually go to a neurologist. You just got prescriptions from your GP, which I'm not a doctor and I'm not a neurologist. But is that was that the best idea? So you went 7 years. I mean, I assume it was some state of denial, right? Where you were
I'd say the first 3 years were in denial, and I had to quit drinking. I quit drinking a year after I was diagnosed.
Which is shocking to me because I think that were I in that situation, I think my drinking would intensify. Did it?
It did when I was diagnosed. It went crazy.
Yeah,
I totally doubled down on it. Because I didn't want to. I didn't want to think about it.
Yeah.
It alienated my wife and my son. It was a really tough time. And when I came through that, when I earned her trust again, and we had 2 more kids, we had twins. And because before that, I said to her at some point, "Let's have another baby." And she was like, "Are you out of your mind? Are you crazy? Look at you." And I realized it wasn't about the Parkinson's that she had. She was averse to it. It was the alcohol. So I had this great moment where she found me on the couch and said, is this what you want?" Like the guy,
on the couch,
Yeah, I'd been passed out the night before and I spilled Coors Tallboy, which is unfortunately my last drink.
That is really such a shame.
And
Coors Tallboy was the absolute. Well, I mean, I
it
guess
could have been a bottle of Jameson's, but
yeah,
it was a Coors Tallboy. But she said that moment and I changed my life around. And that was about 4 years in. So about 74, 75, life started to turn. My daughters were born in 75.
You mean 95?
95.
Yeah.
I do that all the time. That's the sign of getting old.
I mean, you know a lot about Parkinson's. Are there couples that break up? I mean, I have to imagine the responsibility to be married to somebody with it and to become a caregiver. You mentioned a lot the in sickness and in health part of the wedding vows. That she got a lot of that in sickness and in health. But do a lot of couples break up?
Yeah, a lot do. Personally, I know 2 that have broken up, and it's a lot because it's not going to get any better. Like it's kind of like, thank you, sir. Can I have another? I mean, it's just like she just takes it and deals with it and parries with it, and she's one of the ones who goes to me, be careful. She's one of the ones who says, be careful. Watch what you're doing. Slow down. Babe, I get Parkinson's disease and a bad back and a broken arm and I have no balance and I don't care. Slow down. You can go slower. And that's great. I mean, that's cool. It's much better than someone watching me go too fast and then running to help me up. She's really smart and she's really funny.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. I mean, smart and funny is good. And I mean, because out of smart and funny comes loving and watchful and present. She's all those things, but there's no like if I'm putting on my shoes and I'm struggling with my shoes, she won't say anything until I say, "Can you do me? Can you just put your thumb in there for a second?" And she'll do it, but she won't get up. Let me do that.
Yeah.
Let me put those shoes on for you.
Yeah.
She wouldn't do that in a million years.
Yeah. But you had this huge secret that only the people knew around. Did Tracy? Did she want you to come out? Did she understand why you were keeping it secret?
Yeah. I mean, for the first part, and then I was a kind of a graduated series of events. You know, I told Tracy and my close family, and I started to tell some chosen business associates, and then a couple other people knew. But what was happening was, it was getting to where photographers and paparazzi and stuff would shout out to me, "What, you got Parkinson?" And so I heard the buzzing there, and I knew that it was only a matter of time before they put it out there. And I talked to Tracy about it. I said, "I feel good. I feel like I worried for a while if people could laugh at someone they knew was ill, or however they perceived it, and so I was a little anxious about that. But it was. I always say to people, this was before Twitter and Instagram, and before all they existed. If you want to get some information out, you told Barbara Walters and People Magazine, and so I told Barbara Walters and People Magazine, and it was all over.
Yeah.
And it was a real relief. It was.
It must have been a relief. I mean, you tell stories of sitting in the dressing room, basically trying to punch out So you were having the symptoms were like jerking movements, and you have this is a live studio audience. This is not something that you.
No, it's tricky. It's tricky. It's high wire walking. It's really tightrope walking, and in a way maybe it was even exhilarating. I don't know.
It was exhilarating.
Maybe it was in some way. Something kept me going, but I think at a certain point I tell the story in the new book about the turtle tattoo I got.
Oh, nice tattoo.
Because it was the last day of 1999, and we were in St. Thomas, and it's Keneal Bay, which is gone now. It's totally wiped out by a hurricane.
Oh.
But we went swimming, and all the kids had seen turtles all weekend. I'd never seen a turtle, and at the time I was trying to figure out whether to stay with the show or leave and start the foundation. And I was making a decision about retiring from the show. And so I went for one last swim, and like 2 minutes in, I see a turtle, and I just followed him around for 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And in the grasses, and he was really cool. He had a big chunk taken out of his flipper, and he had a scar on his nose. And he just tolerated me. He kind of looked at me like my dog looks at me. And just kind of like, oh, okay, come on. And we just swam around, and I came out, I got out of the water, and I said to Tracy, I'm leaving the show. Because I just saw this thing just doing what it did, and that's how I made that decision. And then when I was going through all the stuff that summer, that year, I just kept thinking, the turtle,
yeah,
take me somewhere.
Yeah. So when you did the Michael J. Fox show, do you think that people weren't ready to sort of live with you as somebody who was different than they remembered you from your other shows?
I see it differently. I see it that we I shouldn't have done the show. I mean, I shouldn't say shouldn't. I'm happy I did the show because it was what it was. It was a good experience. I met a lot of nice people, but still in all, and it's something to go into a network and pump a show and go into every studio, and have them go, we'll take it, and just like 22 on the Cash on the Barrel, I just
everybody wanted it.
Everybody wanted it, and because it was a good pitch. It was a pitch based on my early books about being a dad with Parkinson's and being someone who's in the public eye and someone who has great relationships with his kids, but it's always changing. He's always changing, and the needs and the pressures on the family are always changing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and it was a little bit strengthened, emboldened by Curb Your Enthusiasm, which showed me that there was an appetite for real behavior of whatever sort, whatever someone was experiencing, that they could take it. And like Curb, just when I did it, I was really nervous. I was nervous about Parkinson's community a lot because I didn't know what they'd think, and they loved it. I mean, they loved it because it just put what we're going through.
Well, Curb came to you because of the Parkinson's, right? I mean, Larry called you up. I mean, this to me seems like for him one of the ballsier calls that he would make. So he called and
I couldn't believe it. I was talking to him on the phone. And I was saying, I can't believe what he's saying. I said, this guy, this is crazy.
So he calls you up and he says I want to do a storyline. If I remember correctly, he wanted to do a storyline in which your head movements
judgmental.
Judge your head movements. Your Parkinson's head movements were judgmental.
He said, you nodded to me. You nodded toward me in a kind of judgmental way. I said, judgmental. Hey, the way you move your head was judgmental. I said, I'm my Parkinson's. He said, I know.
Exactly, yeah. Because I did notice before you left, you were looking at me and you kind of, shook your head.
Yeah, my head shakes. So I have Parkinson's. I'm a head shaking fool. I'm always shaking.
So you're saying it was a Parkinson shake?
Yeah, it wasn't a Larry shake.
Got it. Okay.
But she was playing background music. It was not a performance. I mean, per se.
To me, it's a little rude. If I went to see one of your movies and I was talking, you probably wouldn't like it.
Well, be surprised. Where are you going to see one of my movies? It's like 1985.
Okay. If I saw one of your movies in 1985, you wouldn't like it if I was talking.
It's getting into time travel. It's just getting weird.
So just to be clear, you're not upset.
So was there any part of you that was just like, this is something I can joke
loved
about?
it.
You loved it.
I loved it because I mean, Larry David, he is a genius at exploring. I mean, he just like found a way to find everybody's dark side represented by his, and just embrace it and go there and live there and roll around in it. And it's a fun place to go. I don't want to live there, but it was really fun to go there because I knew like if I make fun or I not make fun, but point out the lighter side of like there's a scene in the pilot. I really like the pilot a lot.
We're talking about the pilot on Michael J. Fox.
Yeah. And then we started to do read-throughs with the network executives. They would come in and they were like, "Why is he shaking? Why is he moving funny?"
Would they seriously say this, or was it just something you were guessing?
I could tell they were reacting strongly to my symptoms when I was in repose, reading a script. It's of no consequence in the sense that we weren't shooting, so I could just read and just be myself and be feeling what I was feeling at the moment. And I said, I can't work that hard. I have to pretend that I don't have Parkinson's to play this guy who has Parkinson's. I mean, it makes no sense. So
maybe they were looking for somebody without Parkinson's to play.
Yeah.
To play you. You could have had Charlie Sheen play you. It could have been like
There was a great moment with Charles Grodin who did an episode on the show. We did the scene with Charles Grodin where I was upset and he had been hurt playing football in the park. It was Thanksgiving, and we did the scene and I was very emotional and then he said, "Can we do one more without the Parkinson's?" And it's so funny.
Said this?
Grodin, it was brilliant. and without the Parkinson's, yeah, he would say it. So that was my experience with the show. Was that it wasn't ready for prime time.
You did say, I mean, it's very autobiographical. It involves a New York-based news anchor who retires after he gets a Parkinson's diagnosis, but then decides he's going to come back. And then a couple of the lines are, you don't want to get a standing ovation every time you walk into a room, and you don't want, and when they do the promos for your return, there's a lot of slow motion and like piano music and like, so, I mean, but here's the thing that's very difficult is your story is inspiring. How can we avoid the piano music? I mean, presumably every room you walk into publicly, you get a standing ovation. Would you prefer that they sit?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, people's experience with me or like how they respond to me. I mean, it sounds glib to say it, but is in fact none of my business. But it is my business, in the sense that I'm trying to, most importantly, facilitate change and action and movement in the scientific research and the pharmaceutical research and the government commitment to finding advancing cures in neurological disease. So it is important to me that I communicate with that community and with the people in the positions of power and then on another level, because I'm in the entertainment business, when people have to. I mean, I like it when people like what I do. I can't when they're nice men. They generally are really nice to me. I can't. It doesn't belong to me.
It doesn't belong to you. It
belongs to them.
So they feel good.
Well, it's theirs to give. It's not mine to judge or hold up or whatever. I'm
just trying to. We can prepare the world right now. We can say what is the appropriate. If Michael J. Fox walks into a room in a public event, what is the appropriate? We can come up with something right now rather than the standing ovation.
Giant Q signs.
Giant Q signs like QAnon?
Just I mean, whatever they feel. I can't mandate a reaction.
It's a little hard to remember now the days when making fun of the way disabled people move was considered aberrant and not presidential behavior. But back in 2006, recent Presidential Medal of Freedom winner Rush Limbaugh flopped around his studio accusing Fox of faking his symptoms for political gain.
In this commercial, he is exaggerating the effects of the disease. He is moving all around and shaking, and it's purely an act. This is the only time I have ever seen Michael J. Fox portray any of the symptoms of the disease he had. He can control himself enough to stay in the frame of the picture, and he can control himself enough to keep his eyes right on the lens, the teleprompter. But his head and shoulders are moving all over the place. So this is really shameless, folks. This is really shameless of Michael J. Fox. Either he didn't take his medication or he's acting.
In reading your books, well, first of all, I want to, we were talking about movement, and, a very famous, it's funny, the Larry David thing was a little bit of a pickup on the Rush Limbaugh thing. Rush Limbaugh, I think in 2006, you did a pro stem cell research. There were ads for a couple of Democratic Senate candidates like Claire McCaskill.
And then also Arlen Specter.
And some Republicans as well. But he at the time, I'm sure some people remember this. He said that you're over dramatizing your symptoms, or you'd possibly not taken your meds in order to be over dramatic, and it was a ploy. He ultimately it was a half-assed apology.
He said he very bigly apologized.
What the hell is bigly? He very bigly apologized.
I get to where I wouldn't even mention his name. When we talk about it, and to this day, I can't believe this guy. Well, we had a president version of it. I mean. This toxic blowback at anything that doesn't fit within your bubble of righteousness, and he was just sanctimonious and a blowhard, and the fact that we let that creep up to the fact to the presidency.
Well, you did see that Trump actually received treatments, despite having a pro-life base who was very anti-stem. So he was.
And that was fetal cell research. That wasn't. I mean, that was.
He received fetal cells.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. No, but I was going to say. I mean, I don't know if you're ever on the cesspool of social media, but
I go to Instagram when I print.
Instagram is a much happier part of social media.
I post dog pictures.
But I mean, I have to say that, people who were, I think, trying to defend you when Rush had a tearful confession that he was dying, that basically he was dying. People, I think, basically said, serves you right. And they called up the issue of him saying you were faking it. And it seemed like there was almost this like.
That's just bad. I mean, that's just. I mean, it's like a little bit. When Trump got the virus, he kind of went, well, he let that happen to him. Consciously, he wasn't bidden. I mean, he didn't say, I'm going to get, but he thought he was invincible. He put himself in vulnerable situations, and it happened. But cancer, I don't know. You can't equate my thing with cancer. I mean, if Trump.
So you don't see this as because you don't believe in like fate and
retribution
and retribution and karma.
So that's out of my world. Karma to an extent.
You do.
But karma, I look at karma always the other way. I don't look at karma as the John Lennon instant karma is going to get you way. I look at it as the other as a seed plant will be a tree grows. That you did a good thing, and you had one apple. You put the seeds in the thing. You ate the apple, and then you got a whole tree full of apples.
Yeah,
I like that karma.
There's this one aspect of Fox's story that's I think it's a little bit eerie and also quite heartbreaking. Michael J. Fox wasn't a child actor. He actually started acting in high school in Canadian TV productions in Vancouver, which was near his house. And his father, this military guy, wasn't the type who would have given his blessing for his son to drop out of high school and run off to Hollywood in search of stardom. But Fox's maternal grandmother, Jenny, told the family they needn't worry about Michael, just let him go, that she knew for a fact that it was Michael's destiny to become a movie star. And Jenny's word carried a lot of weight in the Fox family. See, what happened was, during World War II, she had these two visions that both came true. And so Jenny was recognized within the family as having these supernatural precognitive skills. And then, when he got to Hollywood, fate seemed, at least initially, to keep going his way. It was only after Matthew Broderick passed that he landed his breakout role on Family Ties, and then it was only after director Robert Zemeckis fired Eric Stoltz from Back to the Future a few weeks into shooting that Fox landed the Marty McFly role that turned him into a movie star. And all along the way, he'd been superstitious, always making a point of being out of the country or out of a major city when any of his movies opened. In his first memoir, Lucky Man, he actually explored this troubling thought. If you're destined to be a star, are you also destined to become sick?
You know, what's very interesting about your childhood is that your family, I mean, you were not, you didn't start acting when you were 7 years old. You started acting as like a late teen. You dropped out, you didn't finish high school. And your family was very supportive because your Nana, who had what seems to be some psychic ability.
That was a belief in the family.
Completely what?
That was the belief in the family.
Her son had gone away to war. Two of her sons had gone away to war, and she'd gotten telegrams saying that both of them were dead. And
she dreamed of white linen in the sky, and said they're both okay.
She had a dream that they were fine, and it turned out she basically. And it wasn't just that she had a dream and she had full confidence that they were fine. And then 2 days later gets the telegram that they're fine.
They're prisoners of war. They were prisoners of war.
So she has a belief that you're destined for this.
Yeah, she said, and when my mother named me Michael, she was adamant that we not do that. By the way, my middle name is Andrew. But she said, you can't call him Michael because everyone will call him Mike. And you can't call him Mike. She hated the name Mike. But everyone called me Mike. And when I was growing up, I was always Mike. When she told my parents this thing, she said, he'll be famous. Don't worry. He was worried about me because I was so small and I was so strange and eccentric. And they all get together and tut-tut and wag their heads. And my grandma said, don't worry about Michael. He's going to be famous. And all over the world, and everyone will know him as Michael.
When I read this, and you say that you've entertained these feelings, this is a feeling that there was a destiny. So when you became very famous, your father actually died before you got a Parkinson's diagnosis. Yeah. You said that you think that your father probably would have felt like there was some sort of divine retribution. Did you feel this way?
My father used to feel that. He was so hardworking, and he was so. But he, like I said about my mother too, they were born into the Great Depression and came of age during World War II. It was like it said my daughter was born just after 9/11, and my youngest daughter was born just after 9/11, and graduated 2020 in this mess, and didn't have a graduation. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it toughens you, it builds a certain thing. And what made my father was very risk averse. He just like he couldn't metabolize the kind of risk it took to do what I did, and because it was about keeping the payments up. And I picture my father in his boxer shorts at the kitchen table with an adding machine and all the bills. And I couldn't, as much as I admired that, I got that. At a young age, I got what that was about. I didn't want to live it.
But do you think that, can I just read you this passage real quick? So what would my father have made of events to come, and how would his reaction have colored my own? I worry that my dad would have taken my diagnosis as a confirmation of his darkest views of the world, proof that happiness and success were not to be trusted. I suspect he may have interpreted my PD as the cosmic price I had to pay for all my success. That would have not been helpful to me. For one thing, there have been times when I have felt as much myself, and the belief, which after all is nothing but superstition, has only gotten in the way of getting better. So if you go in believing that there's a destiny for success, do you feel like this disease came to you for some? You've said that you actually became happier once you got the diagnosis.
I don't believe that there's a big figure with scales weighing each of us individually and assigning us our fates. Mm-hmm. I think there is such thing as destiny, but it's self-created. You have to accept risk. You just have to accept risk. Yeah. And my father had an expression, and it really, I hate to repeat it because it can be taken the wrong way. And I know he meant it in a certain way, but he'd say everything I touch turns to shit. Like he'd try to get through something and get.
Your father would say this about his own.
Yeah, about his own thing. He was kind of like Jackie Gleason.
The one thing I just watched last night, Back to the Future for the first time in years, and it's a little like the your dad in it.
Yeah.
What's the character? George.
George McFly.
Everything that George touched
Yeah.
turned to shit, right?
But George didn't realize it. George was happy.
Yeah.
He was happy. My father was happy too. He was a very funny guy and very. I mean, when I wrote about him in such detail in the first book, he had just died a few years previous, a couple of years previous, and so it was much more raw and I had a lot of things to work out with him.
Yeah.
I worked them out in those pages. Now I get him. He's the guy who came from nothing. His mother left when he abandoned when he was a kid.
Yeah.
He grew up around the racetrack. He was a hot walker for a while, and then they gave him a couple of rides, and then he got too much weight, and he joined the army. And I mean, it's a tough life.
You discussed a little bit that there was a small cluster. I mean, young onset Parkinson's, from what I understand from your writings, it's probably not inherited, or people think that there might be environmental factors. And you said that, the first studio that you worked in Canada, there was a small cluster.
Yeah.
So when you get this tumor, do you think, my God, was I living on 3 Mile Island? Do you think that that's related?
That's half of the optimism thing. I don't think like that.
You don't what?
I don't think like that too much. I mean, that was just a thing that happened. They don't know whether I was born with it or whether it happened somehow. It was benign, so it wasn't metastatic, but it was it was, and I could not. It was hard.
What's
it was
interesting
hard,
to me and somewhat ironic is that you had made a big point of having to hide your life. I mean, a little bit, but I mean, basically, you had to be secretive for years. The books that you've written are incredibly raw. I mean, incredibly personal. Does everybody approve? Does everybody in your life approve?
Yeah, I check with everybody. I check with them. I say it's in the acknowledgments in the new book. I said, Tracy, you could have edited this, but she just lets me go. I just think if you're gonna do this, and the thing is that you're experiencing life, and you're a creative person, and you need an outlet for your creativity, and I draw, but I can't draw anymore. I play guitar, but I can't play guitar as well anymore. I act, but I found limitations in that. I found limitations in my memorization of lines. But I could tell a story, and I had a story to tell of what I can withstand. I should say I, not we, or not you, but what I could withstand, and how I thought about things, and maybe like if you do a painting, or you do a play. Maybe people get something out of it, and that's not my business. It's my business to just tell the story. But if I'm going to tell the story, don't sugarcoat it. Don't.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is very, very raw, and I have to tell you this, and because you've been so honest, I want to tell you this, and I want to see what your reaction is to it. I was reading this, and I was very moved by it because I without going into too much, I've had low moments recently where I felt like I've been battling certain things. I've had professional setbacks. And I just felt but on the other hand, I have a beautiful wife. I have my health. I have 2 kids. I'm not, the COVID hasn't rendered me broke. I mean, we're totally fine.
You seem to enjoy your work.
What?
You seem to enjoy your work.
Yeah, at the moment. No, but I was just thinking I'm reading this and I feel like one of your messages is gratitude. And I feel like in reading, especially the travails you went through in 2018, having the tumor on your back, I just thought to myself, I am so lucky, but I feel like it's unfair to you because all of a sudden, I'm putting myself in the position being like, God, look how difficult it could be. But you were the difficult case. I mean,
no, there are people that lose children, that lose their home, and lose their ground. You can lose so much, but. And then the other side of it is, well, you just are who you are, and your losses are your losses. But I don't feel, I feel that anything that, my books aren't prescriptive. They don't tell you how to do it. Like how to wear a bright colored shirt every day. Mm-hmm. It's nothing like that. It's just shit happens, and you can get through it. You can slug through it, and not only can you slug through it, but you'll see things on the other side, and then you'll be ready for the next shitstorm.
Do you think that you would have been a smaller person had this not happened? There was a description you had of fame, which I thought was interesting about being the bubble of fame. You call it a life sheltered, narrow existence, fueled by fear, made livable by insulation, isolation and self-indulgence. And the way you described your life leading up to the Parkinson's diagnosis was a lot of like fear about like whether you were gonna like.
Well, I can believe how big I hit. I mean, I was like 1979. I left Canada and went to the States. I lived 80, 81, 82. My friends at Delta Tau Delta frat house at UCLA, so I get free beer from there, and I buy plane wrapped food, and I was just living at the starvation level. And then by 83, 84, I was a millionaire.
And you had all those cars and everything.
Yeah,
I mean, would you have been? Do you think had this not kind of?
Tracy was the beginning of all good things.
She was the beginning of all.
Related to this part of my life.
Michael J. Fox, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed having you on the Originals. Thank you so much for doing this.
I can't tell you how much I enjoyed having this conversation with you. I would tell you, but I can't tell you.
You can't tell
I'm going
me.
to tell you, I had a great time.
You had a good time?
I had a good time. It was good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It was-
You look fantastic.
Well, thank you. I feel good. You look good, too.
That's our show. But before I go, I do want to leave you with one quote that particularly moved me. He said, "It was one of the great ironies of my life that only when it became virtually impossible for me to keep my body from moving would I find the peace, security, and spiritual strength to stand in one place. I couldn't be still until I could literally no longer keep still." Happy Thanksgiving. I wish you the same thing that I'm wishing for myself. May you find peace in stillness. Rather than our theme, I'm leaving you with the guitar stylings of Michael J. Fox shredding with Coldplay at MetLife Stadium 4 years ago. This episode was produced by myself, Andrew Goldman, as well as the eternally sunny Rob Heath, who is a most unmiserable bastard. Special thanks to Team Michael J. Fox. That's Nina Tringali, Jamie Candell, and Leslie Sloan, as well as Holly Teichholz from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Thanks also to Donnie Moss, Lauren Kusarak, Robbie Myers, Silver Fox editor Mayor Rashawn, as well as the trio that I personally live for, Robin, Henry, and Charlie Goldman. If you liked this episode, even if you didn't like this episode, please subscribe, rate it highly, and tell 1, 2, maybe even 50,000 of your friends. The Originals is, as always, a highly replaceable production.